All right, so today we got a Dell Inspiron 3505 that's not charging. Again, this is a very common problem on these Dell. On most Dell laptops, this is a common problem. So the computer would sometimes stop charging out of nowhere, and you gotta figure out what's going on. So let's get to it, do some testing, and show you the goods and the bads about this one. Let's switch to the like here. All right, so here I got a good known charger that I'm gonna plug in for testing. And first, what I'm gonna check for is the 19 volts. Of course, we're gonna switch it to volts. And we are getting 19 volts. Okay, now we're gonna check for the power supply ID, PSID, 3.3 volts, which we get in 3.29. Good enough. So at this point, the battery should be charging now. Okay, and we get an 11 volts on the battery. Unplug the charger, we get 10. Plug it back, 11.2. So the battery is charging. At this point, we have no problem. Let's see maybe if we could. Okay, so the battery is still charging. Okay. All right, so as you can see here, when I move the charging cable, the battery stops charging. And then move it the other way. Well, it depends how you move it. Okay, so yeah, it does seem that this is going to be a charging port issue. Okay, so right now we get in 19 volts. We get in power supply ID. Moving the charger, we'll lose the power supply ID and also the 19 volts. Okay, so this is not very common. The most common problem is you will be getting the 19 volts. But not the power supply ID. So let me explain for you. So in that case, if you're just getting the 19 volts but not the power supply ID, not the 3.3 volts, there's something you want to look for. And let me show you under the microscope here. Okay, so there is, it's going to be on the other side of the board on this one, but most likely I will show you how it looks like. The problem is usually one of those diodes, one of those MOSFETs actually, these on the back of the computer. These do go bad. And in some cases, you'll see like a hole here or some burn marks. So these diodes do go bad. And that's responsible. One of those actually is responsible to getting back the power supply ID on the charging to the charger. So it'll know that it's a 90 watt or a 45 watt in this case charger. Yep. And it will charge the battery. Another case would be, let me show you the pin here inside the charger while we're on the microscope. Okay, so as you can see here, this charger has an internal pin, and this pin is the power supply. This communicates with the computer, and it somehow tells the computer that this is a 45-watt charger, or it's a 90-watt charger, whatever the computer needs. And if this pin is not working, or even if it's bent sometimes, or sometimes it loses connection from here by the edge. So in this case, you won't get the 3.3 volts, and the computer won't charge. Okay, but in our case here, it was the charging port, so we're gonna go ahead and replace that. And I do have one ready here. So in most cases on these laptops, it's the charging port, the charger, that MOSFET I told you about, and in some cases it's even the battery. In some cases it's a couple things, it's not just one thing. So sometimes you have two problems or more. Actually, last week I got a laptop that had all these problems. It had the MOSFET bad that I replaced. It also had a bad battery which was swelling, and it had a bad charging port. Charging port was broke, and also the charger wasn't good, so I had to replace all these. Let's hope we could replace the charger here without having to take the whole thing apart. Let me focus here. I don't like the autofocus cameras because they just focus on my hand or on the screwdriver, but not on whatever I'm working on. So I guess we should be able to manage replacing it without removing the whole thing. All right, so we'll unplug it. Move it out of the way. You get the replacement. And it's gonna go this way. And of course, now we're gonna check and make sure we have no more problems. Okay, so we do see the light, and we got 19 and 3 volts, as you can see here. We got both voltages. And we could move the charger around, the cable, and we still get in the voltage. So that's it. This was our problem. And by replacing this port, it's going to be solved. Okay, now this does come with this thing here that'll prevent it from breaking the cable. So let's hope it's gonna fit. It should fit just right. All right. Okay, so get it over here. And we're gonna get it around that Wi-Fi cable. Flip it over like so. So this was actually a bit longer than the original cable, but it did work pretty good. I'm gonna make sure everything fits perfectly fine here. And we do one more test before we plug everything back up. And it's working great. So at this point, all we need to do is put the screws back in. The top cover. And I'm gonna put the screws, and that's it. This would be a done job. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.